So welcome, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the Maine AMC Maine Chapter's Winter Hiking Webinar. I'm Bill Brook, and along with Janine Libby and Sarah Honda, we'll be talking to you this evening about winter hiking. I've been winter hiking for over 20 years and leading AMC winter trips for the past 10 years. I've hiked most all of the New Hampshire 48, and as Sarah and I were just talking about, I haven't got Jefferson yet, but and all but one on the Maine 4,000 footers, which is Reddington. And I've done multiple winter summits of Mount Washington and Katahdin and winter trips into Baxter. I've also climbed Mount Rainier twice and Baker in the Cascades and been up to 18,000 feet in the Himalayas. Janine and Sarah are also trip leaders and experienced winter hikers. Janine, why don't you go over your winter hiking experiences?
Okay, thank you, Bill. So my name's Janine Libby. I've been winter hiking for over 10 years. I really enjoy doing the 4,000 footers right here in Maine, hiking in the back country as well. I've been to the Gaspé in Canada a handful of times, and hopefully we'll be able to get back in there this year. Just done a lot of winter hiking with Bill and Sarah, and we just really have a blast up there. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Janine. Sarah, you want to give us your
Sure. It's
info?
hard to beat your resume, Bill, but I've been winter hiking for 5 years, and I started by being a participant in one of these webinars, and then started doing the 4,000 footers and working my way up, starting with some relatively easy winter hiking in the 4,000 footers. And I'm on my way to finishing all of them in the winter. I have 4 left to go. I already have Jefferson, but I have a couple others that I need in the presidential range. And that's it. It's my favorite time of year to hike is in the winter. The trails are smoothed out. There's no rocks or roots to trip over. As long as you can dress appropriately and regulate your temperature and get up early and bring a headlamp, it's the best time of the year to hike.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, we all kind of like to hike in the winter, so it's a fun time to be out there as long as you can do so safely. So thank you, Sarah. For questions, what we'd like you to do is use the Q&A feature to submit questions. I know people have been using chat. I guess you can use that too, but if you can use Q&A, we're going to pause at the end of each major topic and answer questions. So if you do submit them by Q&A, though, only we can see them. So we'll repeat it and when we answer it. So any questions on any of that? Just submit it. So I'll give you
I think
to consider.
so there's some feedback happening. I don't know whose end it's on.
Do you have a tablet you're working on with Bill, shuffling papers?
No.
Okay, might be better off to mute. Sarah and I will mute to help with that.
Okay. Yeah. Whoops. Let me just go back here. Sorry about that. Yeah, is it still, am I still making noise? Sorry. So threw me off here. So in terms of winter hiking, the things we need to, we're going to talk about are the environment, managing risk. You know, there's more things to take into consideration during winter hiking, like the weather, etc. Clothing, gear, eating and drinking. We have some recommended hikes in Maine, and we'll pause at the end and answer any other questions you might have. So what is different about hiking in the winter? So in the winter, we have the weather is much more of a factor. The weather is always a factor in hiking, but in the winter, it can have more serious consequences, and that's the temperatures usually cold, maybe below freezing. The wind, with cold temperatures, we get wind chill, which is a significant issue. It could be snow, sleet, or rain. And the amount of daylight's a lot less during the winter, particularly at the beginning of the winter. And we also have to look at the trail conditions. The trail in the winters are nice in one respect in terms of that snow really smooths out all the rocks and everything, but it can be difficult going uphill and a foot or two of snow if you're breaking trail. And there's always, and more frequently now, ice on trails and certainly above tree line. And the trail conditions at the trailhead could be, reasonably warm and not much wind, but at the summit, it could be much colder and a lot windier. Trail navigation can be an issue in the winter also. With the snow, could be a factor. If there's 2, 3, 4 feet of snow, it could be difficult to find any blazes on the trail and even see where the trail goes. So that can be a factor. You really need to know the trail or be able to navigate it with usually with a compass or a GPS. So how does this impact the hiker? Hiking in the winter is higher risk. There's risk of hypothermia, frostbite, dehydration, and hazardous trail conditions. And actually, hiking itself is more work. There's finding the trail. That can be difficult if it's, a blizzard and there's a lot of snow. Breaking the trail is tough. Hiking uphill is bad enough, but if you have to do it in 2 feet breaking snow, it's a lot of work. That's why hiking in groups is a good idea in the winter. You can trade off the lead. And then you've got extra weight on your feet. Snowshoes. The snowshoes these days are very nice with all kinds of crampons and lightweight plastics, and micro spikes, which have really opened up the winter hiking and off-season hiking, I guess shoulder season hiking where there's ice, and crampons for the serious high angle climbing and ice. Anything else you'd like to add to that, Sarah or Janine? No questions on?
I'll say something about trail navigation real quick. You mentioned how it can be hard to find the trail. A lot of times if you're, sometimes the blazes on the trees can be under snow. And then of course, if the blazes are on the rocks, those are under snow. I've been in a situation before where I've come up on above tree line, and then it was hard to tell where the trail went from there because we were breaking trail, so nobody had been there already to pack down the trail. And so the way that we were able to find out where the trail went was by looking for where the branches were cut, because the trail work, people who do the trail work cut the branches. So if a branch is obviously cut, then that's a clear indication that that's the path. So that's one way to kind of find where the path is when you can't see any blazes.
Right. We also have some questions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the questions from Renee, would you recommend solo hiking, winter hiking, if no partner? And if so, can you recommend trails for relative beginner hiking in Maine and New Hampshire?
I hike by myself in the winter sometimes, but it depends um, on where you're hiking. Something easy or that you're very familiar with is good, and if the conditions are good. But if you're breaking trail, it's a lot better to hike with other people. And I think in general, in the winter, it's good to hike with at least one other person. If you get into trouble, it can have bad consequences.
The next, I haven't read the next question. There's another one though. I usually hike alone and I'm new to winter hiking and the skills required. I'd like to find experienced winter hikers to go with. Are there any groups? So yeah, and Bill, I think you were going to talk about that, right? We have some winter hikes planned.
Yes, at the end of this, we have some hikes that are already listed, and we have some recommendations for hikes for various levels, skill levels. All right.
And that's what I did too, Sandy. When I started winter hiking, I always went with a group until I figured it out.
Okay. All right. So hypothermia, which you may be familiar with, is one of the things you face in the winter. And actually, hypothermia is the most common cause of death in the White Mountains, actually. And it's usually not during the winter. You can get hypothermia in the spring and the fall. Excuse me, particularly if you're wet, it's raining or anything. But it's a condition where your body just can't produce enough heat to keep you warm. You can see in these very handy diagrams from NOAA that with there's no wind, you have a little bubble of heat around yourself that helps keep you warm. But when there's wind, the air breaks up this insulating layer, and there's that's what we call a wind chill, and we'll go over that in a bit. And there are signs of hypothermia, and what happens with hypothermia is when your body can't get enough heat, it starts shutting down various extremities. The blood flow to your arms and hands and feet and etc. Doesn't get enough blood. And your brain, your body focuses on keeping your core warm. So what happens is this causes can cause confusion. Shivering is certainly one, really severe shivering, difficulty speaking, sleepiness, and stiff muscles. So when we hike with groups, we always check for these types of things to see, number one, we want to make sure everybody's properly clothed to avoid this, but these are some of the warning signs of hypothermia. The best approach to hypothermia is to prevent it, like most things. Checking the weather. Check to see if the conditions are good for hypothermia. A high wind and a low temperature is one of the major weather conditions that would cause it. How you dress is important. When there is wind, we recommend hiking with a shell, a hard shell that you can put over you that'll break the wind. And then that's windproof, both on your lower extremities and on your upper body. Staying hydrated and fed is another thing that will help. Staying dry. Snowshoeing uphill is very labor intensive, and people tend to sweat doing that. And that's one of the things hiking in the winter is you want to try avoiding sweating. You sweat and you are more liable to get hypothermic. And take bio breaks. Okay, any questions on this, on hypothermia? Anything you want to add, Janine or Sarah?
One thing I'll add is I've never really figured out how not to sweat altogether. And so my solution is I bring another shirt. On most winter hikes, I literally change my shirt at the top of the mountain. And there's nothing like having a warm, dry shirt to put on for the hike down. Highly recommend it.
Well, if it's cold though and windy, that's not a may not be
you
an
can
option.
do it. You can do it fast. You can do it. What's a bio break? It's a bathroom break. Why? So hopefully you're hydrating enough throughout the hike, and so you do need to take bathroom breaks.
Right. If your bladder's full, you're keeping all that liquid warm.
Mm.
So it's taking energy from your body. So that is one of the ideas that around taking a bio break.
Someone else is asking, best navigator, please. All trails on cell phone. I wouldn't recommend all trails on for a cell phone. But, I frankly prefer a map. I prefer using a map. I've had my cell phone die in the cold more than once on a winter hike. So I definitely never rely on that. And I don't find all trails to be the best navigator. I've used it. I've looked at it here and there for little hikes, but I wouldn't use it on a significant hike.
Yeah, we're gonna go over that in a bit, but in general, electronics don't work well in the cold, and batteries don't work well in the cold. So
I can add one more thing about the hiking, especially snowshoeing, climbing up. It's okay to stop and take a layer off, because if you continue to keep all of your layers on and you're hiking up, you're going to be soaking wet. Right. So when I hike, I get warm, stopping guys, I need to take a layer off, and I just continue to take a layer off until I feel comfortable. And then you always regroup before you get to the top out of the tree line to be able to put your layers back on. And that way you're not totally overheating and soaking wet.
Yeah, that's so important, Janine. You can't keep your layers on and get to the top of tree line and not have anything else to put on, because that's a bad situation.
Yeah. And then the other,
quite often, at least on hikes, you're in the parking lot, you're getting your gear ready, you get chilled doing that. So you put on, a down jacket or a heavier, another layer. And then once you get hiking, you warm up enough, you can take that off and save that, so you have something to put on when it gets cold or at the summit. You may put on your hard shell at that point also. So that's really managing your clothing, how you dress, what you're wearing. That's another good way to prevent hypothermia.
And I know the majority of us are going to probably do a lot of this winter hiking after the new year. And as we always have our New Year's resolutions on cutting back on what we're eating, you have to eat when you hike. There's nothing but bonking halfway up a mountain because you haven't eaten properly. So continue to bring your snacks and have them bite-sized so you can eat, and the same with drinking.
Yeah, it's easy. Actually, it's easy to get dehydrated in the winter. Yeah. So yeah, staying hydrated is important, or more important in the winter than it is in the summer. When we go on hikes, we have regular stops for food and drinking. All set. Right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is frostbite. So frostbite is happens to your extremities, to your skin. It's a cold injury where the layers of tissue outer between the skin freeze. And it happens in extremities, fingers, toes, ears, and nose, but can occur anywhere with sufficient exposure. I was on climbing Katahdin one winter with one of our fellow climbers had these leather chopper mitts, which usually you don't see people wearing those, but he had like about an inch of skin exposed on his wrist, and the conditions were pretty severe, cold and wind, and he got frostbite on his wrist. So you have to watch out for that. Frostbite prevention. Check the weather. The wind chill charts, we're going to go over that in just a sec. They give you temperature ranges and durations of how long you can before exposed skin would become frostbitten. And, you know, it's a combination of cold and wind that does the wind chill. And as Janine said, stay hydrated and fed. And as we've been reiterating, dress for the conditions, minimize skin exposure, and stay dry. The skin exposure, dressing for conditions and the skin exposure are really important, particularly skin exposure. You know, when it's windy and cold, if you have any skin on your face or goggles, you know, we wear goggles and face masks or balaclavas, and to cover all of our skin on our face and everything. Any questions on frostbite? Anything you want to add, Janine and Sarah? Okay. So this is a wind chill chart put out by NOAA, the Weather Service, and it has temperature on one axis and wind speed on another in miles per hour. We can see the colored lines are basically how long areas where we'll have take different amount of times to become frostbitten. And one of the things hiking is the temperature decreases with elevation in the winter. Typically, I've seen temperature inversions, but typically it's decreases. And if it's 15 degrees with a 10-mile-an-hour wind at the trailhead, the wind chills is 3 degrees F right there. So if you go up 2,000 feet, if the summit's 2,000 feet, there's a 7 to 8 degree drop in temperature to 12 from 15, and the wind is 25 miles an hour. The wind's almost always faster on the summit. And so there's a minus 10 degree wind chill. And there's a concern of frostbite. I mean, you know, these aren't hard and fast lines with these graduations. And if you're going up to 3,000 feet, there would be a 11 to 12 degree temperature drop to a 5 degree temperature with a wind chill. And when the wind is 30 miles an hour, so that's a minus 19 wind chill, which is right in there with a 30-minute exposure time. So 30 minutes seems like a long time, but when you're hiking, sometimes these things go away, particularly when your attention's focused on other things like climbing up the mountain. So you can see it can, you know, it's not uncommon. It's not impossible to get frostbitten here in hiking in Maine. So questions on that or anything else you want to add, Janine and Sarah?
someone had asked about electric socks and gloves. Are they a good idea for frostbite prevention? And I always bring chemical hand warmers on every winter hike. I
Yeah.
wouldn't go without them. I have a tendency to get cold hands easily. And if it happens, and you don't catch it fast enough, you can quickly become disabled to the point where your fingers don't work. And then if you were by yourself, you'd really be in trouble because you can't undo buckles, you can't get to your emergency gear, you can't open your chemical hand warmers. So I never hike without chemical hand warmers. And sometimes I even put them in my boots too.
Right. So electric socks and gloves, I mean, there's nothing wrong with electric socks and gloves. It's a little added weight, but the major concern is how long they last. They'll actually heat. I mean, if you go in for a 6-7 hour hike or something like that, or if you have an issue, if there's something happens and you end up staying in one place for a longer amount of time, they might not be a good idea. We don't commonly see people use those for those reasons. I mean, they use them skiing and things like that, and there's nothing wrong with them, but we tend to go with chemical hand warmers, and they have foot warmers if you do that. The thing is to not have your skin exposed and not get chilled. If you take your gloves or your mittens off to adjust a snowshoe or your spike, put your micro spikes on or something, your hands are cold and you're going to have to warm them up. And when it's real cold, it can take a long time to do that. So that's why we'll go over this in gear, but if you have glove liners or something like that, that's what we do too, is you can wear you can wear thin gloves and wear mittens. Mittens are really the best thing to keep your hands warm. Your feet, we have, there's a lot of nice insulated boots. Most of them are like 200 grams of insulation. There are some 400 you can get, but and usually, except for, I guess if you climb in Katahdin, that might not be great, or Washington, or in the Whites at altitude, you want to keep your feet warm. And it depends on how your body goes. My feet are what get cold for me usually. So what else? Oh, I see there's this question around, why do you dehydrate more in the winter? You don't actually dehydrate more in the winter. It's just you're not as thirsty is really what the problem is. You still need the same amount of water. You're expelling water with every breath. When you can see your breath in the cold air, that's moisture that's coming out of your body. Right.
And there's another question here, Bill. How do you recover from moderate hypothermia in a hike if it already set in?
I recommend hiking uphill. You generate a lot of heat. But putting layers on, having layers. That's why we recommend, usually for all the hikes that I do anyway, and I think everybody else does, we recommend you bring a puffy jet down or synthetic coat, something that can go over everything, so you don't have to take everything off to put it on. Just it goes over it. Most of them will do that. So that's the best way. Have your body, what can you do to have your body generate heat, and put on layers. So
Because what I noticed on my hiking is I dress light hiking up, and I'm surprised on how much clothes I wear hiking down. Because myself, I don't tend to work as hard hiking down because I slide down a lot in the wintertime. So I wear more hiking down.
that's right. Yeah, that's definitely true. Me too. put it on. I see another question here that has, you recommend taking a personal locator beacon on a winter hike. So a personal locator beacon is used when there's danger of avalanche. And the only place really in New England that you get an avalanche is on Washington or Katahdin. Most other mountains in Maine, if it was an avalanche, it would be fairly trivial. They're not high enough or steep enough to really be a problem. So in general, no, you don't need a personal locator beacon. The search and rescue people, if you got into an issue, might have one. And if you have clothing, you can buy clothing now that has reflective elements in it that reflect personal locator beacon signals. So you don't really need to carry one. If you go mountaineering, if you ever climb Rainier, you will have a personal locator beacon, but we don't, in general, we don't use them here. Tuckerman's Ravine is the place where they have all the avalanches in the White Mountains. And if you're climbing up in there in the winter, yeah, you might want one. On Katahdin, usually it's not a big issue on Katahdin for avalanches, but hey, it wouldn't hurt. So, all right. Any other questions? We good? So let's keep going. So we as winter hikers are really weather hawks. We check the weather. We know where to get it in the forecasts, and the National Weather Service is always a good place. Point forecast. They usually have a map. If you go to the NOAA weather page, they have a map, and you can just click on the map and it'll give you a forecast for that particular area. If you want to see what it'll be at the summit, they'll give you the forecast, but they are forecast. And the closer the day of the hike is the best time to get the forecast, obviously. Mount Washington Observatory, always a great source. And they put out, if you're hiking in the presidentials at all, you ought to be looking at the weather on Mount Washington Observatory, the higher summits forecast. And they have an avalanche center also. I haven't really used that much, but any other advice, Janine and Sarah?
I also use the mountain forecast site, which is helpful. And I sort of compare them all.
Yep. Okay. All right. So this is an example on North Crocker, the difference in snow. So, even if you hiked it last year, it could be totally different this year in terms of the amount of snow and ice. So the conditions are really dependent on the weather of the season. So now we're gonna go into some of the clothing. Before we talk to it, I'm going to run this little video that Denise made, who has done this presentation previously on this. So let's listen to this.
Hi, we're going to talk a little bit about clothing and layering now. So I am currently wearing my base layer, the layer closest to my skin. It's non-cotton, synthetic. I am wearing sock liners underneath my wool hiking socks. Base layers usually come in light, medium, and heavyweight. I usually start out on the light and the medium and just add layers, because when you have your base layer being heavy, it's harder to regulate your temperature if you start to get hot. So a great feature with a lot of hiking shirts is also that they have thumb holes, so you can cover your wrists a little bit more. It's just an added layer of protection. So we have this, and so my next layer would be my hiking pants, my soft shell hiking pants. And you can wear your 3-season hiking pants for a lot of the winter hiking, just over sort of a pair of long johns. and that should be fine. So we've got this, and the next thing we do I'll start with the shoes. So we recommend hiking shoes between 200 and 400 grams of insulation. So I'm going to put on my 200-gram insulated hiking boots now. And I'll really quickly show you, these are the 400 grams. I would wear them probably single digit temperatures and below zero. They're thicker, they're warmer, and they're usually pretty good. And if I needed anything else, I'd probably throw in a pair of chemical foot warmers. These are mountaineering boots. These are more for technical terrain. They actually have little grooves to clip in crampons. I don't wear these very often. For most hiking, when you're starting out, you won't need to worry about mountaineering boots. I just wanted to show you that that's what these are. So this is optional, but I recommend getting a pair of leg gaiters. So the leg gaiters just go on and Velcro in the front, and they help keep the snow out of your boots and keep your lower half of your legs a little drier. So I pretty much always wear my leg gaiters in the winter. My next layer is my fleece. When it gets a little bit colder, I'll put this on. And my next layer, this is what I call my puffy. And I will usually only wear this at the very beginning of the hike in the parking lot or during long stops or at the summit, because it's usually too hot to wear this while hiking. So this is a down puffy, and they usually come in down or synthetic. The thing about the down is that it's usually lighter weight, a little bit more packable. It does cost a little bit more, and it's not quite as weather resistant. There's also a synthetic option for this insulating layer, and that's usually a little bit more affordable. It's not always as lightweight or as packable, although they are making it, technology is coming a long way, and it is more weather resistant. So those are things to think about when choosing your insulating layer. The next layer is my hard shell. This is going to protect me from the wind and the rain. And I get my hard shell big enough to go over all of my layers, though you won't always need to wear it over all of your layers. It really depends on a lot of the environmental factors. And this also has pit zips, which are optional, but it helps with ventilation. If I need my hard shell going uphill and it's getting too hot, I'll take down my pit zip and just ventilate a little bit. I usually carry two hats, a lighter weight one and a heavier weight one. The heavier weight one is for the summit. I also carry rain pants, which are the hard shell from the bottom, and I'm not going to put them on now, but these are full zip rain pants, and they really actually help with the warmth when it's windy out and if it's inclement weather and if your butt's sliding. They help keep your butt a little bit dry and less cold. So the next thing that we have are the gloves. I have my glove liners. I also carry an extra pair of just mitten gloves in case my glove liners get wet. And then when it's really cold and at the summit, I have my bigger mittens. And because my hands tend to get really cold when I stop moving for any period of time, about 20 minutes before I reach the summit, I'll take a pair of hand warmers, the chemical hand warmers, and I'll throw them in my mittens. And then when I get to the summit and I have to do things, my hands aren't numb. So that's that. And now we get to the summit and it's windy and it's freezing cold, and I have my face mask. And some people have a balaclava, which goes over all of their face, but my face mask goes like this. And I also have my ski goggles, so I'll put those on. So I have my face covered, and then I'll ask my friend, hey, do you see any skin? And they might point out some skin. And that's to protect against things like frostbite. So here I am, and this is basically layering.
Denise went over the clothing. So base layer, no cotton. Cotton's great for, if you're hiking in the desert and you want to evaporate moisture off you where you're exposed, but it just keeps the moisture near your skin. So synthetic is best, or wool for long underwear. Hands, liner gloves, feet, liner socks. You can use liner socks. They sometimes help to prevent blisters. Insulating layer, fleece or wool hat, top, fleece, down, synthetic jacket. Down and synthetic are lighter than fleece these days. Bottom, synthetic pants. They make lots of different kinds of climbing pants, but as Denise said, we can use, hiking pants if the conditions aren't too severe and you have hard shell pants to go over them. Hands, insulated mittens or gloves. Mittens will keep your hands warm. Gloves are good for the dexterity for adjusting clothing and equipment and that kinds of thing. So liner gloves with mittens are a good combination. Wool socks are good for your feet. That's what I wear. Outer layer. And this is for severe conditions. I mean, if you're hiking, if you're not going above tree line or getting an exposed area, if you're hiking in the woods in the winter, you may not need to have all this protection. Usually in the woods, you're sheltered from the wind to some extent. But balaclava for your face and goggles are good. Hard shell jacket for wind and rain protection. Down synthetic puffy jacket. Hard shell pants. Gaiters are good. And if you wear, usually microspikes aren't sharp enough, but if you ever wear crampons, it's a good idea to wear gaiters. I've shredded hard shell pants with crampons before. Crampons are large, big, sharp spikes. Feet, insulated hiking boots. On our trips, if you show up with summer hiking boots, it's a no-go. Same with cotton. So, and we usually explicitly state that on the trips. Can you get by with summer boots? Yeah, you probably can. But again, your feet can get cold. Insulated boots, they're pretty readily available and they're good to have. We don't usually hike with felt snowpack type boots. Those are heavy, but you can use those if you're going on a easy, not too long hike. Anything to add to that, Janine and Sarah?
I think Denise did a great video. Somebody asked, could you describe the thickness of the pants and puffy coat and the weight? The pants, like Denise said, that there's there's light, medium, and heavy base layers. And so I usually go with the lighter medium like Denise does. And then the outside pants, if you look up soft shell, it's not super thick. And like Denise said, some people even can wear just regular hiking pants over them. And then the rain pants to go over top in case of wind or colder weather is good. And then the puffy coat is nothing really special. This is my puffy. It's just, it's just really, it's down. So it's very warm for the top.
Yeah, I would just say stay away from insulated snow pants like you'd use in skiing.
Right.
Skiing, you're not being active. You're going downhill. There's going to be more wind. Um, you don't want insulated ski pants are really overkill. They do have shell type ski pants, which would be fine. But yes, I would just stay away from insulated ski pants. So
Yeah, I agree. Somebody's asking why upside down for the water bottles? And that's because it freezes on the top first. So if you put it in right side up, the first part that's going to freeze is the top where you open it, and then it will be frozen shut. That's why.
they also now you can buy these hydro flasks, which are basically a thermos, a lightweight thermos, which hold about a liter of water. I've gone to using those, and water will stay unfrozen in those in most every condition. They weigh a little more, but I guess it depends on how cold you like your water. But you can also get a insulated sleeve to put your water bottle in. Have those. Those are good to have. I don't think EMS used to sell them, but I don't believe they do anymore. But you can probably find it online. But yeah, usually we fill them up with hot water, boiling water. A lot of people did, and then put them in upside down, and hopefully they'll stay drinkable. All right, so I'm going to go over the equipment, and I think I have another video here. Right, so Denise has also provided us with a video on boot traction. So let's look at that.
Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about foot traction now. We're going to start out with the least aggressive foot traction. These are yak tracks. You might have also heard of stabilizers, which are similar. These have metal coils and the plastic frame that you sort of slip onto your boots. Stabilizers have like these little screws on a plastic frame that you slip onto your boots, and these are really good for walking to the mailbox in an icy driveway, or for flat or gently rolling terrain. They're not really good for hiking any sort of elevation. We tend to find stabilizers and sometimes yak tracks on the trails in the winter, or hanging from a sign at the trailhead, because they tend to fall off of feet, off of your boots. So we don't really recommend these for any sort of elevation, but they are an option for sort of flat walking trails with not too much ice. The next step up these are Catula micro spikes, and you can see the spikes that they have on them. And a lot of people wear these for hiking mountains, and they're great. They just sort of slip on your feet. There's an indication for front there. And these are good for a lot of hiking in the mountains in New England. And the newer ones actually have thinner plastic going around, but Catula in general makes a pretty good product. And there's a similar one that Hillsound puts out that I don't have with me at the moment. Hillsound also does these are the Hillsound Trail Pro crampons. They are not a true crampon, but they are a bit more aggressive than the Catulas, as you can see the difference in the spikes. And these also indicate front, and they just slip on your boots. And I use these for the majority of my hiking in the 4,000 footers in the mountains in New England. So those are a good option. Now, true crampons we have here. These are the Gribble 10 plus 2 points. And as you can see, they're pretty aggressive. And for people just starting out winter hiking, you don't have to worry about these. You're not going to need these for most of what you're going to do. I probably use them maybe 2 or 3 times in an entire season. Usually sort of the northern presidentials or something with really, really thick ice. And these particular ones can go on both mountaineering boots and the regular insulated winter hiking boots. And they have the anti-baller plate. So that's an option once you get into the bigger mountains, more technical terrain. So now we're going to talk about snowshoes. We're going to start out with these are, well, they're unisex, but pretty much the men's version, MSR Lightning Ascent. They've got a metal frame. This is sort of the old binding system. They've actually upgraded that since then. I just don't have a sample right now. And they have a really cool function we call the televator. It's a heel lift. So this reduces the stress on your calves and your legs when you're going uphill. And on the back, these are sort of the crampons of the snowshoe. And we've got the points here in the center and the front, and then points along the sides, another point through the center. And that's really important when you're hiking mountains in New England to have these points of contact to really grip and get you up there. I think this might be a 30-inch snowshoe. Then we have the woman's version of the MSR Lightning Axis. These are also metal frame. It's a slightly newer binding, but I think they've also upgraded this since this came out, because I think this might be like 4 or 5 years old. And it also has the televator, and the women's ones tend to be sort of slimmer, just I guess the way that we walk. And they also have the crampons in the similar spaces on the sides and the center. So that's another option. The ones I use most often, by the way, these are 25-inch, and that is according to my weight. And it's good for breaking trail when you have a longer snowshoe. I tend to sort of trip over them occasionally, so I actually prefer these. Are the Tubbs Flex Alps. They've got a plastic frame. I love the binding system. I just sort of put my foot in here and I tighten this up and then button it and then tighten this up. And it's also got the heel lift. And I'll show you the back. These are the crampons. And as you can see, the Tubbs and the MSR, the Tubbs have slightly more aggressive center crampons and the sides, and they even have more here in the back. So I really like these for what I do. And there are a lot of options. Local stores, big box stores sell snowshoes, LL Bean, and they have some good ones there, but you really want to make sure that you have, for any sort of elevation, a snowshoe that works for the conditions, that is stable on your feet. If you're going to do anything with elevation, it has crampons on the sides and the front at least. And something that you can easily put on your feet with while you're wearing mittens or gloves, because sometimes it's just freezing cold. So you want to be able to manipulate this easily while you have things on your hands. So these are some of the options. There are other options out there, but these are the most common ones that people use to hike in New England.
All right, snowshoes. So Denise went over several types of snowshoes. I mean, the Tubbs are really nice. I like them. I have them, but they're a couple $100 or more now, probably. And I mean, you can get into it for a lot cheaper if you don't currently have snowshoes. But if you're going to go uphill, you should definitely get some snowshoes that have some level of crampons on them. And you can do a lot with those. Micro spikes, you don't really need crampons unless you're doing, Washington or Katahdin or some of that. I think the New Hampshire chapter doesn't really require crampons on their hikes unless you're on Washington. And I only have 1 or 2 places where I would recommend them on the ones I do, most of the ones in Maine. But micro spikes are really good, and I get those or the Catulas. They're both great. Poles, when you're snowshoeing, poles can be handy for balance. Well, the other comment on snowshoes is unless you're planning on carrying a going winter camping with a backpack and all that, or breaking a lot of trail. I think 30-inch snowshoes are heavier and more difficult to maneuver, and you might want to start off with the shorter ones. A lot of the trails, the popular trails get packed out pretty quick now, even in Maine. Certainly in the whites, they do. Lots of them you don't even need snowshoes for. Less so in Maine. Quite often you'll need to break trail. A backpack. Denise didn't go over backpacks, but in the winter you want a little larger pack than what you might carry in the summer. 40 liters is a good size. You know, you have more gear. You'll have layers in your puffy jacket and all of that stuff. Headlamp is usually a requirement. You may not plan on being there after dark, but particularly in the January timeframe, and it gets dark earlier. A first aid kit. If you go on a hike with the Maine AMC, we always have first aid kits. You should have your own personal first aid kit. Also, you can buy them or just put one together with some basic things. A foam pad, like a Z-Rest pad, a closed cell foam pad is a good thing to take on a winter hike, you can use it for sitting on, and it's an insulating layer if something happens and somebody has to be laid down. We always take foam pads and sleeping bags on our hikes in the winter. Sleeping bag is for stashing somebody if they're injured to be rescued. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's a good safety measure. And then we've discussed hand and feet chemical warmers. They're pretty readily available. They work well. Take a couple pair with you if you get cold. So what are we doing? We have questions on any of this? Or do you
Yes,
have anything to add there, Sarah, Janine?
We do have a couple questions, and I'm glad because I see the question popped up twice. Sometimes the snow ends up sticking to the micro spikes. And I know sometimes snow ends up sticking to the bottom of my snowshoes. So one way that I prevent that snow buildup, especially when you have the temperature changes and it's more like the snowball snow, I have Easy Glide wax that I put on my cross country and backcountry skis, and I'll use that wax and I'll wax my all my snowshoes and my micro spike grippers, and it prevents it from having that snow build up, because nothing's worse than having your snowshoe and you're snowshoeing and now you're carrying a whole load of snow with your snowshoe. So those were two things that I find handy to keep and share with others, because if your snowshoes or crampons are gripping with snow, theirs are too.
Right.
Someone asked about pro crampons. Is that one that Denise mentioned? Is pro crampons one of the Hill Sound crampons?
I don't know.
Uh,
No, they're I don't think so. No.
Michelle, I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure what the pro crampons are. But if they're similar to microspikes, then you certainly don't need microspikes as well. But I'm just not quite familiar with what pro crampons are. Or maybe you mean like really aggressive, like actual real crampons. And then if you got those, then you should also get microspikes, because microspikes will be the one that you would use more often.
Yeah. I mean, the ones Denise had, the Tulas, no, those are the microspikes. The other ones are have a little bigger spike. That's what I use too all the
The Hill
time.
Sound.
The Hill Sounds, yeah.
Hill Sound.
But they're basically the same thing. They're not crampons, just ones that maybe has a little bigger spike, but I think both of them are equally good.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes you can get snowballing up on your micro spikes. I had that just a week or so ago on a hike. But and with crampons, they have a plastic plate on the bottom. They call an anti-balling plate, because that's a big problem. If you don't get full engagement of your crampons on high angle stuff. What else? Other questions?
Yes, we have another one here. Snowshoes for going uphill. Are they also good for casual walking, or do you need two different pairs?
You want to answer that?
So yeah, I mean, I'm like Bill. I have like 3 pairs of snowshoes. I think you have 4, Bill, or maybe 5.
5, yeah.
Yeah. But we always go back to our favorite one. And I have a nice small pair of snowshoes that I'll just do my regular walking with, as well as climbing with. They're comfortable, they're easy to put on, easy to take off, and yet they are aggressive enough. So when I do climb, they have a really good grip.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
I
have
mean,
one pair. I have one pair of snowshoes. You don't, and mine are MSRs, and they're the Evo brand, the Evo model. And I use them for everything I do. Whenever I need snowshoes, and mine don't have the televators. I got the base model without the televators. So when everyone else puts their televators up, I just keep on trucking up.
yeah, I don't usually use the televators a lot. They're nice to have at some instances, but you can't walk. It's very difficult to walk downhill with them. So you gotta flip
Right.
them back. So if you're
Right.
going up and down a lot, it's not worth it. What else I was gonna say? Yeah. The other thing you'll encounter, and it's inevitable, particularly above tree line, is rocks in the winter. You know, most mountaintops, I mean, you have snow, but they have a lot of wind in it, and so you find ice, but exposed rocks a lot. So you saw Denise's microspikes, they get rounded off. You need to sharpen them once in a while if you use them a lot like that, but that'll happen to your snowshoes as well. What other questions do we have?
Someone's asking about a foam pad. Does inflatable sleeping pad count instead of a foam pad? I don't.
You could use an inflatable sleeping bag, but you got to inflate it. That's all. So and deflate it. A foam pad's just, you can just use it. You need, basically you're looking for something to insulate you from the cold of the ground. Or if somebody's injured, they might be going into shock. You want to help keep them warm. It's a good idea to have a foam pad and to do that, because it's almost impossible to stay warm if you're staying even in a sleeping bag if you're laying on cold ground. I know I've done it. What else?
Someone is asking, how do you attach snowshoes on your pack?
Okay, we're going to talk a little.
And it depends on the pack, actually. Some packs are easier to attach than others. My winter pack that I have has straps on the outside on the back of it, and I strap them to the back. Maybe I can show you, but some people carry them on top of their. I don't like that way. I like this one. And I just attach this. So I attach them this way. So I have these buckles on the back, and so I can feed them through the snowshoe and secure them tight so they don't move at all. This is my preferred way because then I can get into my pack just fine. I just lose the pocket, that it's covering. I just don't put anything in there. But some people put them on right under the brain, but then they just have to pick them up each time that they go into their bag. But some packs, you can get them on any pack, at just different ways.
Right. Yeah, it's always a bit of a trick to figure out what's the best way to attach your snowshoes. I have like straps with buckles, and you can use bungee cords, whatever works for you. Sometimes just the straps on the pack will do it. I mean, they do make like winter packs for like AT skiing and stuff like that you can strap stuff to. But you can usually figure something out with enough straps and everything. You should also think about, I mean, several times I've had to repair equipment hiking, people's equipment. Excuse me. And I would say, so it helps. I usually carry, excuse me, duct tape, which is kind of the universal thing, but that doesn't work well on snowshoes or micro spikes. I carry a small amount of thin wire, plain like baling wire, that I've wired up snowshoes with. I was on a hike once where somebody broke the snowshoes and we cannibalized the wire off a micro spike to repair it. So, it happens sometimes, but that's something to consider. A repair kit, like you might have a repair kit for your tent or for your inflatable pad, a patch kit. You might think about, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen that snowshoes, particularly as they age, might give out on you. Okay, let's go on to food, nutrition, and hydration. So we've talked a bit about this. Water freezes. Bladders, I know they have insulated sleeves and some people use them now, but I stay away from bladders and stick with bottles in the winter. Like I said, you can get a hydro flask insulated, which is good. And hot drinks are also very tasty when you're cold, and it helps warm you as well. So putting hot water in your water bottles, or boiling hot water, some people do, and putting them in upside down in an insulated holder is a good thing. Your food is going to freeze. If the temperature is freezing out, it will eventually get there. Lots of people, I mean, if you're using Gorp or something like that, that's good. If you have trail bars or something, you might want to chunk them up. I don't know, different people, whatever you like to eat hiking, this probably works in the winter. Calories are good. You don't need to worry about calories. You burn a lot more, 20 to 50% more calories in the winter because, you're working harder. And, there are various recommendations around what you should aim for carbs and protein and fat. But I think, I hiked, one of the guys on Rainier, his favorite trail food was pizza. So that's what he used to take, pizza and candy bars. So I don't know, whatever does it for you. Meals, I would say whatever you normally eat. Most of that can be done in the winter. I usually am kind of stick with sandwiches, but peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. But any thoughts, Janine and Sarah?
I usually bring soup in the winter.
Do you? Yeah. Some people bring tea.
And tea.
Yeah, and tea. I bring tea sometimes.
Yeah, tea and peanut butter and jelly. That's
Yeah.
my staples.
Right. All right. So just to kind of, oops, man. Okay. All right. Sorry, new computer. Anticipate, so some guidelines, generic kind of guidelines, anticipate weather and trail conditions. There are websites that do have trail reports. I think Sarah, you mentioned one, right? So
Yeah, New England trail conditions.
New England trail conditions.
Highly recommend going to it
Yep.
before you do anything.
So, and we've given you some weather sources to check. You should check, certainly check the weather. If you go on a hike with us, it has to be really cold and windy and a blizzard before we usually cancel a hike, but it varies. But in general, if it's snowing, we still hike. So if there's a scheduled hike. Physical conditioning. Okay, so I mean, I would say the best physical conditioning for hiking with snowshoes is to hike with snowshoes or to go out and hike. I mean, I have some mountains locally to me anyway that I use for training. So when I'm doing any serious hiking, but you're using your legs and your hamstrings and your quads. Those are all the areas you should concentrate on. There are exercises. I mean, lunges, dips, all those kinds of things. Or just getting out and walking. Walking is good too. And you're carrying more weight, particularly if you're camping in the winter, you're carrying a lot more weight. Thermal management, pace is a good way for thermal management. Take it easy going uphill. Don't it'll still be there. There's no hurry. Layer your clothing. And here's a big thing: when you stop, you want to stay warm, because then you'll get chilled and have to go through this chilled reheat cycle. So when you stop, hopefully your puffy is big enough to just put over whatever you got on. That's the best way to do it. Don't take off a layer and put it on. At least certainly don't want to do that when it's cold. Have the right gear for snow and ice. Snowshoes and micro spikes will get you basically most everywhere in Maine and New Hampshire. If you're going on the presidentials or Katahdin, you need some more gear, but in general, a decent pair of snowshoes, and it doesn't have to be, have excessive crampons or all of that, but they should have crampons. You're going to go uphill. If you don't have crampons, you're going to slide. Even with crampons, you may slide going downhill. Like the old rawhide snowshoes, even if they have the instep crampons, those don't really work well at all. So you got to invest a little bit in snowshoes. Navigation, we touched on this a little bit. In the winter, electronics, touch screens don't work well. Batteries don't last long. Hiking apps aren't a lot of help sometimes in the middle of a winter when you've lost the trail. A handheld GPS works well because it has buttons which you can operate with gloves. Touch screens, I guess there are gloves that work with touch screens now. But map and compass skills are good. You should have a basic understanding of the terrain of where you're hiking, and know how to use a map and compass. I think we're going to offer a map and compass course this year, the Maine AMC. So if you're interested, keep looking. That we may do one. We have done that quite often in the past. It's a good thing to know in general, and it's not difficult. It's really not that difficult. I know people have, like, what are they? Garmin InReaches, which are good. I mean, you can get that. That's satellite communications, or emergency locator beacon. Those are aren't bad things to have if you're going, not terribly necessary for a lot of hikes, but you know, it doesn't hurt. Food and water, we just talked about that. Plan for freezing and calories. Excuse me. So realistic mileage goals, you know, it's you're going to be going slower in the winter, and you know, uphill breaking trail is a lot of work and it takes time. So what you could easily do in the summer, maybe a reach goal in the winter. Contingency gear, be prepared. Headlamp, foam pad, sleeping bag, first aid kit, and emergency locator beacon. You know, particularly if you're hiking by yourself, those are good things to have. And turn back. Turn back if the conditions are worsening or you're cold. The mountain will still be there. You can go back. It isn't, and we quite often will make decisions of turning back or not based on the conditions. I was hiking Baldpates in the Grafton Notch with a group, and it was a really cold day. I mean, like, wasn't below zero at the parking lot, but it probably was below zero at the summit. And you know, we had some people who were like, you know, I'm freezing, so we just said, okay, this is it, let's turn back. And this is really what I'd recommend, particularly if you're beginning, hike with a group and an experienced leader. I think, you know, we can talk about this stuff, but it's best to get out and actually do this. And you can, you know, just learn a lot faster if you go with some people who are experienced doing it. And, you know, don't hike in less than -15 wind chill to start. That's probably a good rule of thumb. The coldest I've ever started hiking was -17 degrees. Don't ask me why, but yes, we did. And leave no trace. Even in the winter, you know, we need to practice leave no trace always, which is, you know, wrappers, food, all of that good stuff. And in general, just good etiquette in hiking. Anything else to add, Janine and Sarah? Okay, any questions on this?
So Bill, what I'm getting is quite a few questions about where to buy the best clothes. I know I buy a lot from LL Bean, but yeah, I'll go to secondhand stores and find a pretty decent down-filled jacket that I can pack in my backpack for in case of being extra cold on a winter hike, especially on top of the mountain.
Yeah, there
Where
is
do you
a
buy your
place.
stuff?
Well, you know, there's a place in North Conway. I'm trying to remember the exact name of it. It's the mountaineering place up across from the inn. They have a basement with used equipment. It might be worth a check. I've gone in there. I've never really bought anything. But you can do that. Yeah, I buy my gear everywhere. Beans, EMS, REI, Patagonia. And you know, you don't have to spring for the most expensive stuff. I mean, you know, there is some good stuff. Even Eddie Bauer stuff's good, which is offered there. So, you know, it's just usually what you pay for in this kind of gear is the weight. So lighter weight costs more, and you know, with and ruggeder stuff that will last longer. So that's what you're buying typically, usually. But yeah, I guess gear is where you can find it. I don't know. There used to be Campmore, which had deals on gear, but I haven't seen their catalog for years now. How about you, Sarah? Where do you get your stuff?
Same places. I don't really have anything to add there. I see someone asked what's the best source for trail maps? And I think I buy most of my trail maps from the AMC. I have, this is the White Mountains 4,000 footer one that I think the AMC puts out. And then they also have, oh, I think I think most of my maps came with the book. What's that big book that?
Maine Mountain Guide.
The Maine Mountain Guide. And so, yeah, I bought the Maine Mountain Guide and the New Hampshire Mountain Guide. And
Yeah.
those both came with, those, Bill.
Whoops.
Those both came with
Visible.
maps.
Yeah, there are maps in these, and you can buy the maps separately because we're with the AMC. So, but there's also the White Mountain Guide. And I mean,
Yeah.
these are good. Not only they have maps, they have descriptions of the trails and where the trailhead is.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. So it's a worthwhile investment if you're going to do much hiking. And in the winter, you really need to take a map with you.
And those
And
trail descriptions are
recommend it.
really good. Those, I highly recommend both of those books. The trail descriptions are really, really good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the trail descriptions, they say if it's an easy, intermediate, advanced.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I-
sometimes.
the main one is definitely broken down that way. I think the
Yeah.
White Mountain one is. I haven't looked at it in a while.
Right.
Yeah.
But then it'll also talk about water crossings and, also everything about the trail.
Yeah, we haven't talked about that, but there are places in the Whites and in Maine where crossing water can be a big issue, particularly late in the winter or in the early spring.
Mhm.
Runoff, brooks will be higher, rivers will be higher, and it can be a real issue. And approach that with caution.
And that's something to watch the weather about in the week leading up to your hike.
Yep.
And also that website, New England Trail Conditions, can also let you know, because people will let you know how difficult it was to cross water.
Right. Yeah, somebody's posted the place I was thinking of. It's IME, International Mountain Equipment in North Conway. Yeah, and they have new and used gear. That's good. North Conway's got a lot. It's got EMS, REI now, and IME. So, it's worth a trip.
And a little bit more about water crossing. If you do end up getting your feet wet, I always keep a set of oven bags in my backpack and a dry pair of socks. So then if I fall in the water and I get my feet wet, my friends will fish me out of the water, because it has happened plenty of times in the past. And I'll hurry up, I'll change, take my boots off, my socks off. I will put the insulated oven bag on my foot, then my dry pair of socks. No, I put my dry sock, then the oven bag, and then my wet boots back on. And knock on wood, I've been able to go and continue the whole hike. And everyone, when I do it, everybody just kind of flips out. And I said, well, I always have an extra bag just in case somebody else falls in. But it's really fast to get your boots off and change right off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Janine, I bring bread bags. What is that? What's an oven bag?
Well, oven bag is more sturdier. It's like a turkey roasting bag.
Oh, I'm with you. Okay.
Okay. So it's a lot more thicker, ruggeder. And so your toes won't like poke holes in it.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. And Janine and I have a little interesting story on water crossings. So we were doing a trip through Baxter. So we went skied into South Branch and skied from South Branch down to Russell Pond to the bunkhouse, stayed there. and then skied out over Wasatacook Lake to Sauderhunk bunkhouse. And one of the group had been up there before, and it said, "Oh yeah, little Sauderhunk stream, snow bridge, no problem." We get there and no snow bridge, open water.
No.
Fortunately, a Sauderhunk stream isn't more than 8 or 10 feet across, and it was
But
a little deep. We were
it was roaring.
and it was going. So
Yeah.
what we did was we had a saw, which is a good thing to have, a folding saw or something in the winter too. We sawed down a couple of fir that spanned the brook and scooted across the fir that made a bridge and scooted across that. So and we didn't get wet. So it was good.
No, we didn't. Not that one. I did not fall in. Thank goodness.
Anyway, okay, so let's keep going here. We're not done. So here's some thoughts on hiking in the winter. Easy, Bradbury, should do Bradbury. Everybody does Bradbury. Mount Agamantus in Wells, Douglas Mountain in Sebago, Libby Trails Forest in Gray. And, there's a ton of land trusts that have trails around Maine. And, just if you go out and snowshoe those, be a good walk and get you some experience snowshoeing. Intermediate Pleasant Mountain in Bridgeton, Little Bigelow in Northwest Somerset, a little further away. It's up Kiribati Way, but a really nice hike with great views. Rumford Whitecap, a great hike. It's not difficult, and it also has nice views. Burnt Mountain in Kiribati is a good hike too. More advanced, the Spec in Grafton Notch, Puzzle. Also, Puzzle is a good hike with good views. Saddleback and Rangeley was in advance. I guess it depends on if you actually go up the AT or just go up the ski trails, which I've done both. Going up the ski trails is a little easier, but maybe more difficult now that the skiway is back in operation. And then strenuous, we didn't list a lot of strenuous, but the Bigelows, West and Avery Peaks, they're a fair hike in and, a lot of elevation gain. So, but a very nice views there. And so that's some recommendations. And we have a bunch of hikes already listed here. I won't go through these, and some of them are waitlisted already. So we're doing that. And most of these are a bunch of easy ones, some advanced. On the 18th, there's this, well, it's waitlisted already, but a Traverse of Camden Hills. Caribou, young members, which, anyone can join that actually. Run for Whitecaps on there, Pleasant Mountain, both of those are good and available in January. And Spec and Grafton Notch, which is advanced. That's very sheltered. The top is sheltered also, so it's a good one to hike. It is a bit of work to get there though. And just check the chapter calendar for hikes and amcmaine.org in the calendar. So thank you. Are there any other questions we haven't answered here? No. Ice
These
axes.
slides are all going to be available. Is that correct, Bill?
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how to make them available to everyone. Yeah, well, actually what's available, it's the slides, but it's a video. So it's a recorded video that Denise did last year that's already on YouTube. So I would recommend you just go to that. It's the same material here. You can, if you have any questions, you can email me. I'm at my email is chair@amcmaine.org, or you can send it to outings@amcmaine.org. I'll get both of them. And oh, somebody's talking about ice axes. So unless you're hiking Mount Washington or Katahdin, you don't need an ice axe. You're more liable to get injured with it than it is to help you.
And I know um, there are ice axe classes you can take. I've seen them now and then, and I will be taking them one of these days because I feel the same way. I don't want to have one without taking a class.
Yes, you should definitely take a class.
Mhm.
IME offers classes in that. So they offer a bunch of different classes up there.
And someone's asking about stove fuel.
Mhm.
And it's true, like, I have a jet boil that I use in the summer, but you can't use it in the winter because it will freeze. I've only done a few winter camping and it's a different type of stove that you bring winter camping, and the name is.
Whisper Light.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
What
It's
you
a
want
Whisper
is a white gas stove. Yeah.
White, right? Because
Or a
that,
multi-fuel stove, but it's got to be liquid because that's what you use in the winter camping. I mean, they have some butane mixtures that go down that are better in temperature, but that's what we use, when we climb mountains. So is gas stoves. They're very reliable in cold weather.
And
All
then
right.
one more question is, what would you recommend hiking in New Hampshire?
We don't recommend hiking in New Hampshire. No. There's a bunch of great hikes not too far from Maine in New Hampshire. And what I'd do is recommend you look at the White Mountain Guide. There's just too many hikes in New Hampshire for us to go into that in detail. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I hope this has been useful to you. Again, check out the AMC Maine YouTube channel. If you can't find it, send me an email. I'll help you. And it'll have all this information on it. Okay. So I hope this has been useful, and thanks everyone for attending, and thank you, Sarah and Janine, for helping out here.
thanks,
You're
Bill.
welcome. You're
All right.
welcome, Bill.
Yep. Okay. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Where's it?